afternoon. Welcome to the Newsroom Pub. I am Milwaukee Press Club President Tom Dakin, and I'm happy to be here today with MPS Superintendent Brenda Cassellius. Dr. Brenda Cassellius is a seasoned education leader with over 30 years of experience championing equity and excellence for all students. Most recently, she served as superintendent of Boston Public Schools, guiding the district through the COVID-19 pandemic, securing $110 million in new annual funding, enacting progressive admissions policies, and advancing a $2 billion Green New Schools deal. Previously, as Minnesota's Commissioner of Education, she led bipartisan reforms resulting in record-high graduation rates, universal all-day kindergarten, and state-funded preschool. Dr. Cassellius has held leadership roles in Minneapolis, Memphis, and East Metro Integration District, consistently driving student achievement and systemic improvements. A former special education paraprofessional and teacher, she is widely recognized for inclusive, community-driven leadership and unwavering commitment to student success. Raised in public housing by a single mother, Dr. Cassellius brings a deeply personal understanding of the transformative power of education. Before we get started, I want to thank our event sponsors. Our presenting sponsor is Spectrum News 1. Our supporting sponsor is We Energies. I'd also like to thank our event partner, WISPolitics.com. WISPolitics.com partners with the Press Club for this luncheon as part of an ongoing event series in Milwaukee, sponsored by HB Strategies, Medical College of Wisconsin, Spectrum, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and Wisconsin Transportation Builders Association. And now I'd like to introduce our media panel. They are AJ Bayatpour, CBS 58 News, Corri Hess, Wisconsin Public Radio, and my colleague Rory Linnane from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Now please welcome Brenda Cassellius.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom, and at the Press Club here, and just being able to have a small, intimate conversation, fireside chat, about education and the importance of giving our children everything that they need to succeed in life. And, you know, obviously, when you are investing in children, you're investing in the future of your community and of the state of Wisconsin. And so I'm really excited to be here with you in Milwaukee for this season, to be able to make a difference in the school community, and turn around our public schools in a way that makes all Milwaukeeans proud. So just incredibly grateful for this opportunity to speak with you today, to hear from my colleagues within the media who tell our stories, good and bad, and be able to share transparently some of the things that are facing the school district right now, some of the things I've been able to do in the 6 months that I've been here with my team, and kind of the promise of the future. As we move forward, we're looking at about 3 big key areas of focus. The first is obviously our main mission, which is ensuring children can read and ensuring that they get everything that they need in terms of their academic success. So prioritizing academics is a huge priority and building block for us this year. The second one is operational excellence. As you know, the governor did an audit this past February that came back and really shared and shed a light on many things within the district that needed to be addressed, and addressed quickly so that we could get to the main mission, which is academic achievement for kiddos. And then the third thing is safety and security, and really the professional culture of the organization. As I've been able to spend the 6 months there, I've really come to terms with what was found in the governor's audit, which is that there was this culture of fear and retaliation within the district. There's a culture of, understanding expectations and making sure that we are able to drive high expectations through the entire organization, and how we treat each other, how we set expectations for children, for our own work, and then holding us all accountable for that. And so those are the 3 key areas: academics, operational excellence, and service to our community, and then safety and culture within our schools and also within the district office. There's been several things within the past 6 months that we had to address immediately. When I first started, it was that had these 2 audits going on. We had the operational audit, which had just been delivered. The academic audit was going to be delivered in May. It was delayed a little bit until June when we got that. But I began to observe, began to go out in the community, began to talk to folks, be very visible, speak with the media, reestablish my relationships with the media and our overall district relationship with the media so that they would understand and know that we have nothing to hide, that we are a growing organization, that we will admit error and our human imperfection, and we will do better. And so I think that is something that I bring around continuous improvement and ensuring that we do continuous improvement within our system. And so we'll be focusing on that quite a bit as we move through the next 6 months. Also, we had a lead crisis within our schools. We had lead found in about 106 of our schools that we knew we needed to address. We needed to get a plan. I also had intense pressure to begin to look at my leadership team around that, so had to make some changes with the leadership team, was developing a really great relationship with the mayor, asked for a seat on his cabinet, which he gave me so that we could definitely work really close together on leveraging both city resources and Milwaukee Public Schools resources on behalf of children and families within the community. So I'm really happy with how that has turned out. He gave me Mike Mannon to help us with the lead crisis. I was able to hire Mike Terza, who came over. We have so many Mikes. And hired Mike Terza, who came and helped us lead our facilities work and really develop a plan that was going to be one that we knew we could meet and one that would lead to the least amount of disruption for our students when we opened up school. It was an ambitious plan, but we were able to do it, and we had a really great opening to school. Thirdly, we had a financial crisis in the district. And so the state had put the district in corrective action. We had been meeting missing deadlines. I thought this could be on the back burner because our accountability office was handling it, but when we continued to miss deadlines, I was like, okay, I need to get involved because we're continuing to miss deadlines. So quickly started leading that effort and putting in place supports, hired outside project management help, surge support, being able to develop my relationship with the Department of Public Instruction, understand clearly what was happening, moved them up to my office and was embedded with the team for 3 days straight to really try to understand the problem, and which was a problem with our system talking to their system, really. And so now working 3 streams of work, which is driving and finishing the FY24 audit, which we have completed now, and it's in final review with the Department of Education, hoping this will be reviewed by the end of the week or next, and release the last part of the funding that's been withheld. So, and then secondly, getting our FY25 audit on normal ground and finished by December of this year, which is, we're on target to do that now with the project management help and outside support from the Council of Great City Schools. And then the third thing is getting these 2 systems to actually talk to one another so that we don't find ourselves in this position of having to do so much cleanup and duplicative work of pushing data to the state and it's spitting back to us errors and then pushing it again and it spits back more errors. Because the 2 accounting systems and languages aren't speaking to one another. And I want to just be clear, it's not that the balance sheets aren't correct. It's not that there's mismanagement of the money. It is that clearly our balance sheet just is not talking to their balance sheet, and we just needed to make sure that those 2 systems were speaking to one another, which we're clearing up for the FY27 budget now. And then now, as we look forward, some of the work that we're doing is looking at strategic planning. Part of the governor's audit was that we need to have a new strategic plan. So I did 9 listening sessions, have turned that into what are some potential goals and mission and vision for the district and some strategies that we can work on with some measures of success that the board could adopt. And they'll start those conversations here in October. We also have the budget coming up for FY27, so we need to plan for our next year's budget. And so we know that there are some shortfalls in that structurally because we've accounted for $75 million in vacancy adjustment, meaning we just anticipate, we have 10,000 employees, we anticipate that a certain percentage of them won't get filled. So they count that into the bottom line. And 75 million is just too much to count into the bottom line for a structural balanced budget. So we have to address that, and then we anticipate that there will be raises again for our employees, and so that would probably cost another 30 million. So I've been clear that there could be up to $100 million in cuts that we have to make. And then Perkins Eastman, before I even came here, has been doing some work with advisory, which I have not been too involved with just yet, on our facilities and looking at our school buildings and which ones are underutilized, because we need to maximize our support for our students. It's really hard to have great opportunities for students in schools when there's just not enough students to get all of those amenities and support systems that they need. So those are kind of the buckets that we'll be looking at this next school year as we launch our literacy plan, as we then begin strategic planning, and we focus our work around making sure that kids are getting what they need in the next school year. So I think that sums up kind of where I've been the past 6 months. There's a few other things, but I'll let you all ask me some questions, I think.
Okay, I'll start us off. So I wanted to ask about the last area of focus you mentioned, safety and security. During the budget process, you talked about implementing a safe schools hub and bringing in new technology for weapons scanners. There wasn't a lot of detail about that during that time, so I was wondering if you could explain what you may have implemented since then and what we can expect to see going forward.
Great, that's a great question. We are getting ready to launch this Safe School Hub, and the vision for that, it's not there just yet, but the vision for that is that there'll be a space within the district that looks at all of our thousands of video cameras, and it goes into one location, so that we have that housed, and that's 24/7, so that we can see all that's going on around our schools and have the video for all of that. We have that, but we want it all to go into one place and be monitored 24/7 with our new emergency response protocol. We also initiated this year new emergency response protocol that matches our first responders protocol, so that we're not going on old information, but what's current with our current police and fire and emergency response. And so that's new. We have 300 safeties in our schools, which is new. Well, not new, but they've had 300 safeties in our schools, but we have them deployed. We have SROs in our schools. All of that will come out of one hub and be managed by one individual. And Kevin Hafman is over that work and has done that work. He's a former firefighter. We have Dr. Jones, who's leads our safeties. He was former MPD. So we have good expertise at the highest level within Milwaukee Public Schools to keep our kiddos safe. As for the high school scanners, we couldn't get agreement from all of the high school principals on one scanner, so we have piloted a few other scanners to look at. So you just have to have good buy-in from the high school principals on those things, because you don't want long lines coming out and kids getting to school, getting to class tardy. They wanted them to be able to pick up, you have to dial them to a certain sensitivity so that they pick up phones and vapes and other things that kids are bringing in, knives, that kind of thing. And so we wanted to make sure that the new scanners that we do bring in have that kind of capacity for schools where that might be an issue. And so we think we're close to agreement on those scanners, and hopefully we'll get those implemented sometime this school year.
Okay, and then is there any facial recognition technology with the scanners or the cameras?
So some of the scanners would come with that or may have that, but we would not turn that on because we have policies against that. So we would not have any facial recognition technology. The one that we are looking at now, I don't even know if they have that facial technology, but we would not use it.
Hi, thank you for being here. The district is rolling out a new literacy policy that is focusing on getting all students to learn to read and the science of reading. But it also includes 40 hours of intensive training for educators. How were you able to convince the school board to do this and the teachers union? I know things to get teachers to do additional training have failed in the past. So
Well, our teachers are really eager to learn how to teach students to read and have the tools to be able to do that. And we already had adopted the high quality materials. So they wanted to know how to use those materials. So they're eager to do that. They just need the time to do it. It was a controversial and tough decision for me to change our calendar this late in the year. I know that was tough on our families, and I thanked our families over and over again, and I continue to thank our families for the inconvenience that it causes them to have plans shifted like this late for them. But we added 4 half days, and then we have 3 additional professional development full days. Our first one is October 8th, and we're also training paraprofessionals. So because the adults in the room work as a team, they just have different jobs. It's important for paraprofessionals as well as educators, and our administrators go through this training as well. So everybody needs to have the understanding on how students learn how to read based on the science. And I think it's just going to be continuing to find time within the teacher day to be able to do these trainings. Also making sure that next summer, I was here too late to plan summer activities, so it'll be important for us next summer to be able to plan activities so that we can just pay teachers during the summer as well. So you have to set aside funding or find grant funding to be able to make sure that teachers are paid for this extra time.
I was just going to ask, so then are the teachers paid extra then for these days?
They are if it's on non-work time, but if it's work time, we've already budgeted for that within their work day.
Looking at the long-range facilities plan, one of the latest sets of proposals are kind of focusing on 5 or 6 schools, and there's a closure model, there's also a merger model, but it seems like the number is 5 or 6 schools. Would you say it's fair to say that MPS is honing in on approximately 5 or 6 schools being ultimately selected for closures and or mergers, and what's the timeline for that happening?
So we do have to make mergers and closures. We just need to right size. The district used to have 120,000 students. We now have about 65,000 students. And there are just a number of school buildings that are in disrepair. The deferred maintenance on those buildings just doesn't make sense to continue to change roofs and do HVAC systems, and have inadequate spaces for children. They don't have play yards. There's just a number of things that make it not viable or financially in our best interest, and some of them over 100 years old. And so, when do you stop investing in 100-year-old buildings and you start thinking about rebuilds or major renovations within schools? So I'm suggesting that we need to do that work with the community and start thinking about what that work looks like. I think it's going to be, over the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be much more than 5 schools. But I don't know what that looks like, and I'm much more in favor of merging schools and repurposing the schools that are left behind in other ways, housing or other ways that serve the community. Yeah.
So quick follow-up then, since you open the door a little bit, you said much more than 5 schools. Do you have a rough number, 10, 15 schools over 3 to 5 years?
I mean, we have 156 buildings. And so with 156 buildings and, our enrollment is down 50%. So, I mean, there's definitely needs to be more thought put into that with the community. And so the community has to come back with the solutions. And so I've said all along, this is going to be community driven and community led. Just yesterday I was meeting with the Northside community and looking at North Division High School and all of the schools that feed into it. I think that we are going to need to have feeder patterns into our schools. We need to look at neighborhoods. We need to look at our transportation budget and how is that impacted. So there's a number of complex issues that go into it. It's not just about closing schools. It's about opportunity for our students and what kind of opportunities are we creating for our students. And they need to have all of the amenities that suburban schools have and all of the opportunities that they have.
Along those lines, real quick, are you looking to move toward a broader move of a lot of schools being K-6 and then 7-12 across the board?
Well, I think obviously in Boston, that's what we did and moved to a K-6, 7-12 model, and there have been a number of other districts that have moved in that direction, mostly because our kids are so connected now and much more mature and ready to take on a lot more opportunities around careers. How many of you have had traditional junior high school or know what traditional junior high school is? It's much more career focused. It's much more into the labors and trades. And so there's opportunities with different programming that you can have for junior high model for 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. And then you can do more of the college and career apprenticeship type of track for 10, 11th, and 12th graders. And then have K-6 be more of the elementary model. I think what hasn't served our students well is where you have 7th and 8th graders in a K-8 school and you have 25 of those kids. They're just not getting the rigor that they need to be successful at a high school level and take high school rigor. I know parents love to have K-8 schools because they're small schools, but you get one teacher teaching all subjects. It's just almost impossible to have that teacher understand all of the state standards that are needed in all of the major subjects, and have a strong liberal arts kind of preparation for college readiness or even career readiness at this point. So I want to really address and start talking to the community more about the program opportunity for students. And that's not even to mention, that's only on the academic side. Youth healthy development requires that students are engaged, that they have experiential learning, that they have opportunities to explore many different types of careers, that they have opportunities to take athletics courses and choir and art and music and all of those things, which when you have a small program, it's super hard for those students to get those opportunities to have a well-rounded education and be prepared for high school and career.
Another facilities question for you. So as the district has been weighing which buildings to close, one of the considerations has been whether it has air conditioning. And most buildings at MPS either don't have it or have it in very few parts of the school. And I know you have some experience bringing air conditioning into schools. Thinking long-term with MPS, especially with climate change considerations, do you see a path for getting air conditioning into more MPS buildings, and how would that be achievable?
Well, in Boston, it was something that teachers brought to me right away and said, it's 90 degrees in these buildings, 100 degrees some days. It's just not a conducive educational environment. All of you can understand that. I think the harder thing here in Boston was a funding mechanism. So in Boston, the city funds the schools. The state only funds it by 10%. So I only had to go and convince the mayor to do it. And here it's a completely different funding mechanism for getting funding for schools. And so it is quite expensive. And we also used our ESSER money for it. So, that was a decision that we made because we knew that ESSER money would be ending, that it was just one-time money. And so we knew that this was a huge piece, and that Michelle Wu at the time, the mayor, really was working on a plan already around greening our schools. And we knew we couldn't do full HVAC systems within our schools because that's even more expensive. So we went to the air conditioners, window air conditioners, just to provide the relief. And so we did that. I remember, I think it was 2022, it was September 2022, I got a communication from a teacher and said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Dr. Cassellius, for giving us, air conditioning." I'm like, well, it wasn't a gift from me, it was a gift from your community because they're the ones who, put up the resources for it. And so it's just, going out to the community and saying, is this a top priority? And, our summers are longer. I mean, look at the temperatures already. We're end of September. I'm out there going, should I have closed toe or open toe? And normally by now I have just closed toe, So I think, absolutely in the future, it's going to be in our future. We are going to continue to warm up. And so we're going to have to do something. But I think anytime we're doing rebuilds or we're doing major renovations, we should be considering greening our schools in multiple ways than just air conditioning.
You just brought up ESSER funds, which, if people aren't familiar, that's the money, the federal money that schools got because of the pandemic. How much did MPS get?
I don't know.
I know,
exactly.
I just put you on
yeah.
the spot. I wasn't planning.
I don't know exactly how they got. We got $400 million in Boston, so I would assume it's close to that.
I wasn't planning to ask. Sorry,
yeah,
I didn't mean to.
I don't have that exact
But
number.
I'm wondering, looking, now you're here for 6 months, do you think that the Milwaukee School District used their ESSER funds wisely?
I honestly haven't even looked at how they use their ESSER funding. I've been busy working on the current FY24 audit and 25 getting it on time and 26 rebuilding. And I haven't spent a lot of time in the past because we're moving forward. And so there's nothing I can do with my energy to continue to look at the past, although I have to observe what we have now. And so those monies were already expended, and there's nothing I can do with how they spent it. So I don't want to make a judgment on what was the biggest priority for the community and for the board at that time. For us, it was investing in our air quality in Boston, and so that was part of investing in our air quality. We also put in air quality sensors in all of our classrooms and administrative spaces, which allowed for anyone to go in and look at the level of carbon dioxide, the temperatures in the rooms. You can just go right online and look at that at any classroom.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot there with that. But,
That's okay. I mean, I'm happy to say I don't know. I'm just still learning, so I don't know everything just yet.
In 2023, MPS had hired about 200 international teachers to help fill some of the staffing gaps. I'm wondering the status of those teachers. Are they still here, and are you worried about if they'll be able to remain?
Yeah, we still have, many of those teachers are still here. We support them, and they're wonderful, and they've been a wonderful addition to us, some of them in our immersion schools as well, which is great. We haven't had that strategy this year because of the current political context and the worry. And now, I think I read just yesterday, I had a meeting with our immigration lawyer just a few days ago, and I had the very next day, I heard that the president had decided to put a $100,000 fee on applications for H-1B visas, and of course that would be impossible then for us. So imagine if we were starting this and it was a major strategy for us to use for our vacancies right now, and it's $100,000 per teacher. That's just too much money. And it used to cost, I think, $3,500 or $5,000. It's quite a bit of difference.
So just to quickly follow up on that then, you're saying that that was a strategy you may have otherwise used. You may have otherwise relied on H-1B visa applicants, but now you're not because of this policy. And the second part would be a broader financial question. You're looking at potentially a $100 million shortfall. Would you consider going to referendum then in the next couple of years?
Well, I think, talk to your later question first. Going to referendum, it was barely passed it was like 1%, I think, and it passed. So I also want to just, every time I get a chance to talk to Milwaukeeans, I want to thank them for the referendum that they did pass. It really did make a difference for us. I think we'd be in a much different place right now if we didn't have that extra funding, given the state didn't add any new state aid to the formula. So that makes it extremely, extremely challenging. We will have that will be fully realized. I don't know what's happening with the feedback. It will be fully realized in the next 2 years. So we'll be using it in the next budget, and we've used it in this past budget. So, and then that will just continue to go on. So if there are no new increases and inflation continues to rise the way that inflation has risen, I think I read 26% inflation. That's huge. Like, that's just like everyone else is feeling the tightening of the belt, and we feel that too. I mean, we pay utilities, we pay gas bills, we have to, pay for foods and all of that to feed our children. All of that is the same expenses that any household has, and so we're feeling those same constraints. Would I go to referendum? Only if we need it, and so. It's not like I want to go out just to go out and do fluffy stuff. I'll come out if I absolutely need it, and if the board agrees that we need it, that's when we go out. I'm hoping that we'll get a state legislature that will be able to use some of its surplus to be able to put that toward children. I think it's a good investment and worth the state's effort to put in more money, especially for our most vulnerable kids. As to your first question, which was the H-1B visas. So we had decided a while ago, just because of the political climate, with ICE and all of that it would be challenging. Obviously, we had a paraprofessional that self-deported, and the fear and the challenge to families when they come and how hard it is for them to just live here is just incredibly challenging. So we had decided that it probably was going to be really hard to get those applications through. It can take up to 6 months to get those applications through. Now that there's even further policy by the administration, I think that makes it even more challenging. Does that mean we won't do like a one-off? We had an Italian teacher who graduated with their doctorate from the University of Madison and wanted to teach at one of our school of languages. And the principal called and said, I've got this teacher, can we get this teacher hired? We will work with that, but in terms of a major strategy of going out, it's not out of the question. We might do some of that, but now that we've been now delivered some really hard blows to that being a key strategy for the way that it used to be with $100,000 per teacher.
Back to the possibility of school closures. I was wondering if you could share more about what you think should happen to the buildings. And right now, under state law, MPS in particular isn't able to sell buildings to anyone other than a school operator for the first 2 years. That some people have said have made it harder for the district. Is that something that you would advocate for changing? And what do you think is the best path for those buildings?
Yeah, I don't think that the state should tie her hands on our buildings. I think it's a disincentive to sell the buildings. And I think that they should open up every opportunity for us to work a workable plan with the community, the way that the community wants to reuse their buildings. I mean, these are assets of the community. They're not Milwaukee Public Schools. Actually, they are owned by the city. We lease them from them. And I quite honestly don't think there's any charter schools or other school systems that would probably want the buildings that we would end up not using. So they would need major renovations. And so I would like to see them be used, like if they're totally far gone, I would love to see them become parks or playgrounds and spaces for the community centers, repurposing them for community centers and the elderly, maybe housing opportunities. There's a number of ways to repurpose buildings.
When you were in Minneapolis, you did some pretty innovative things in the district. You did something called Concept Council, where you created...
That was in Memphis.
Oh, I'm sorry, Memphis. Where you created like regions run by principals, and then also, maybe this one was Minneapolis, you took the kids off the yellow buses, put them on city buses.
That was in Minneapolis.
Okay. So are these things that you would consider doing in MPS?
Well, all ideas are on the table, and all ideas work well for the community that you're in it. So I just really want to qualify that any ideas that I did in other cities that worked for them may not work in Milwaukee, but may work in Milwaukee, right? So you have to contextualize anything that you did, but I learned from my own experience and from the experience of my colleagues across the nation and some of the best practices. It just made sense in Minneapolis to the way that we were positioned. And our data showed us that, you'd have a big, huge bus going, and it was costing us millions of dollars to run these buses, and you'd have 2 kids on the bus. It just didn't make sense to do that and then put all this, gas in the air. So it just didn't, and the Metro Transit didn't have good ridership, so it's great to teach kids how to use ridership, and how to use public transportation and be comfortable using public transportation. It was also a way to get kids out of their neighborhoods and into the rest of the community and using the community as a learning lab. And it was part of our high school redesign. We really wanted our kids to be able to have freedom to go to different schools for different classes. Go to the college, we had a program in Minnesota called PSEO. It's post-secondary education options. So they could go to the local university for half of their day or even a whole day, and it's paid for by the state. Just those kind of opportunities, it made a lot of sense to give kids more opportunity to get out of their community, get into the city, learn from the city, and then be able to get additional academic opportunity. So that made a lot of sense. The Concept Council was really, I was 35 years old. Carol Johnson asked me to be I went down to be a principal of just one school, and she asked me to lead 31 schools, and I said, "Are you crazy?" I just came finally to get my principalship and to turn around one school. And she asked me, she said, "I trust you, and I want you to lead all 31 middle schools." And at the time, of those 31 middle schools, only 4 were making AYP, which is adequate yearly progress with the state. and 14 were in state corrective action. It was just a lot of mess. We still had corporal punishment in Memphis when I first got there, and Carol put me in charge of the plan to end corporal punishment as well. She sat me at a table and she said, "You're the only person I trust to get this done and do it right." And so we did it for 117,000 kids, ended corporal punishment. What the community sentiment was 80% in the parent survey said they wanted to keep it. So, it came down to a 5-4 vote at the board for Dr. Johnson really pushing for us not to use that as a punishment any longer within our schools. And I think it made a huge difference in the culture and climate of at least in our middle schools. And we were able to turn our middle schools around within 4 years. We saw a 22 percentage point gain in reading from 6th grade to 8th grade. We saw a 43 percentage point gain for students with disabilities in reading. I think that those things made a huge difference. We put instructional facilitators in all of our schools. We put in a parent coordinator and liaison in our schools. And the thing that I loved about the Concept Council was it wasn't anything that I drove. It was that we had 31 schools, and we took an experienced principal, had them lead 5 other new principals pretty much, because I think we replaced quite a bit of principals. They were in aspiring principal programs and that sort of thing. And so then they led that group, and they tended to care so much more about the whole schools moving rather than just their own individual school. And that was so rare. That magic of caring more about all of the schools and not just your own personal school was something that opened up an incredible sharing among our professional community, among principals. And we were reading together, and we were learning together and growing together and just doing remarkable work together on behalf of children.
You've made clear that literacy is a cornerstone of your approach here, and you want to see improvement there. Not that long ago, we had national NAEP data that came out and showed something like a 30-year low on reading scores nationally. Within that, Milwaukee has some of the worst reading scores out of any large urban district, and you've already acknowledged as much many times. Why do you think in both Milwaukee and now nationally we're seeing a decline in reading scores, and what do you think are the most important steps in turning that around?
Yeah, so I don't know if we see a decline necessarily, because we're pretty low already. I think it might be that others are recovering faster than we're recovering. I think that we had some challenges with recovery, and I think from COVID, and I think everybody is seeing still challenges, with children's mental health, attendance, those sorts of things. You can't teach children when they're not actually in school. This is still a challenge for us. And so we've got to get families to really support us and have good intervention and prevention programming and have good engagement and opportunities for kiddos. This is one of the things with the middle school and moving to a junior high school model is engagement and getting kids engaged and connected in a sense of belonging. Then they'll come to school. And so those are just really important pieces when they're on an athletic team or they have a good peer group and a good social group. They come to school. And when they come to school, then if you have engaging lessons and teachers are confident and feel supported, it's not brain science to get these things going. It is really about the people. It's about the adults who create the conditions in which children succeed. It is about giving the adults the support in a supportive culture and making sure that they have the professional development and then holding them accountable, which is another really key piece, that we all hold ourselves accountable to really high expectations because our children deserve nothing less. And so, I think that, it's, yeah. Yeah. I'll take the next question.
Okay, great.
I don't need to say anything more about that.
So as the district has been exploring possibly closing schools, there's been a couple of models put forward for what should happen to the students in those schools that get closed. Under one of the models, basically the full school community would merge into another school, and that receiving school would get some extra resources to help offset that disruption. and under the other model, students from the closed school would basically scatter to their first choice schools, and resources would just go to the schools of highest need. Is there a model that you favor, or what do you think is the most effective way to care for the students in those schools that could be getting closed?
I think it depends on, I think you use both of those models, right? Every school is different and individual. So if you have a school that has 90 kids in it, it may be just that you are working with those individual families and giving them their first choice. But I think the underlying thing is making sure that you are taking care of those families, right? And that's the biggest thing, and that fit for that child is a good fit, and that they transition well, and there's a good handshake from one school to the next school. That's the bigger thing. I had to close a school in Boston because there was some abuse at that school that had been abuse for many, many years that hadn't been dealt with. It was highly controversial, very challenging, but I promised those families that they would get a handshake, and then they would be able to have a good transition, and they'd be able to pick their school. And they just felt very supported, even though it was a really hard change for those families. We promised, and then in the fall, the deputy, who then became the superintendent, followed through and said, yes, we made sure that everybody was transitioned well to their next school. I think that's the thing. It's the care that you take with the families and with the children to make sure they're set up for success in their new school.
The average tenure for a superintendent in a large district like Milwaukee is about 3 years. And the different things that you've been laying out there, substantial change takes a long time. So I'm wondering, how will you measure success during your tenure here?
Well, I get asked that question again. You know, we asked ourselves that question in my retreat with my new cabinet. You know, if we won it this year, what would it look like? And I think it's, you know, the things that we talked about was really about process this year, you know, like establishing our team, making sure that we're working together, we're establishing our shared expectations, we're honoring that, we're meeting regularly and on our measures of success, and then implementation and making sure we're implementing, that the community is remarking different about our district, that there's hope being built out in the community, that the community sees us ticking away at the operational audit, ticking away at the academic audit, the pieces that are instructive for the things that we have to do, and rebuilding that trust with the community, and that they see us out in the community, all of us, not just me, talking about the work, that our employees start talking differently about the work and start feeling supported. We have 10,000 employees. They are our ambassadors. If they're not talking good about Milwaukee Public Schools, how do we expect others to talk good about it, you know, talk well about our schools? And so I think that you know, that would be a measure of success this year, is that, you know, people start remarking differently about our schools, students start feeling good, and then next year starting to see some enrollment stabilization, and then the following year seeing enrollment stabilize even more, seeing parents choosing our schools, seeing some stabilization within our literacy scores. Now, I don't expect big spikes. Although whenever you do get all of the adults rowing in the same direction, sometimes you can see spikes, but then you oftentimes see a dip again. You know, it's called the implementation dip. And then you see it take off again because we have a lot of teachers that we have to train. A lot of people have to buy into this vision and see how it's good for them and good for their community. And so I would expect we start seeing some results year 2 and 3. So yeah, that's how, and everybody else is like, believing in the work that we're doing. You know, we've already almost ticked off the full finance stuff and feeling pretty good about stabilizing that. We've stabilized the lead. We have now our safety and security plan in place with a couple of things still outstanding to put in place. But, you know, there are things that we're ticking off that are setting us up and building a foundation for us really to fly and soar. It's winnable. It is absolutely winnable because we have good people inside. They just need to be pulled together and build coherence around a common vision.
So we've talked about safety and paraprofessionals. So I'm going to merge this into a question, because in recent days you had a paraprofessional at Grantosa arrested for physically abusing an 11-year-old child. if your pool of possible paraprofessionals is smaller because you can't draw from the international pool the way you once did, how can you ensure that the hiring practices for paras specifically is in a place where you can avoid these types of scenarios? Because this was before you got here, but MPS lost the Head Start contract in part because there were cases of abuse. How will that be addressed under your leadership?
Well, a couple of things. One is, we just passed a ethics, well, we created an ethics policy with our board. There were ethics policies in different places, but we've put it in one place, and we've added now the recommendations around additional ethics training, which then sets the expectation, and then all staff will be trained on ethics. So they'll understand clearly the expectation about interacting with children, and then any consequences that would follow because of that. Those are unfortunate incidents that occur when you have 10,000 employees. We absolutely don't want that to happen, and it should not happen. So we put in place these protections so that it doesn't happen. The second is making sure that we have strong compensation, and we are attracting the best and the brightest in our district. That is absolutely true, that we will be moving toward that. And then I think it's just in our own performance evaluation, feedback, and how we're growing people and how we're training people, and making sure that people have the proper training, that they have the proper understanding, and that they're held accountable for that.
Corri had mentioned how, I think in Minneapolis, you had gotten bus passes for high school students. I just wanted to follow up on that. Is that something you will be exploring for MPS, and will you be looking to MCTS to help underwrite that?
Well, we already partner with the county busing system. I did meet with them, and I talked to them a little bit about the vision and what we had done in Minneapolis, and they just hired someone from Chicago, and Chicago uses the buses for their high school students. So there's opportunity, I think, in the future for us to absolutely partner with them on more solutions that I think would not only help us, but would help them as well with some of their budgeting and ridership.
We've talked a lot about reading today, and the forward test results are expected to be released this week. Any indication, or how do you feel that Milwaukee is going to perform?
Well, I guess it's similar to my answer before, which is that, not looking back, but looking forward. And I would assume probably it might look the same. So now we have the literacy plan, so I would anticipate in the future we'll see little bumps of, that's what I would like to see. And if I don't see bumps going up, then I know that I need to readjust our process. And that, of course, is about continuous improvement. It's going to be hard to get our students who are non-readers already in the system reading. In a Tier 2 intervention system, right now we're focusing on Tier 1, which is making sure there's just good first teaching. When you have over 50%, and we have 90% of our students that are not reading at grade level, after fourth grade, that you have to then address it with just good first teaching. You can't have a strategy that just takes kids who are below. You have to address the core instruction, and so that's what we're doing now. And it's just going to take a while for us to make sure everybody's trained and practiced in doing that, because we have kids who have many, many different levels, kids who are like reading already off the charts to kids who have autism or have major disabilities that prevent them from learning. And so we have to make sure our teachers can, what we call, differentiate in the classroom, which means address all of the different learning levels within their classroom.
We're almost done with you, but I have one more.
That's okay.
So reading was addressed by the legislature with Act 20, and now Republicans also want to address math, which math scores are as bad as reading, not just in Milwaukee, but across the state. Our school districts, do they have the capacity to also try to take on math while working on reading?
Well, you have to read and compute. It's not that we won't be doing math. But our focus in Milwaukee really needs to stay sharply on literacy, because you can't do a math problem if you can't read. And so, it's just a matter of time and effort and money. And I think that we need to just stay focused and get to this point and then be able to move forward on all the other content areas and discipline areas. But just know that we are still teaching math, right? It just is a level of intensity and professional development, and we're right now have decided that our focus is going to be literacy because we know that that's such a critical area. And I believe that if we get our kids reading on grade level, they absolutely will improve their math skills.
Okay, folks, we have a few minutes for some questions from the audience. If you have questions, raise your hand. I'd ask that stand up, let us know who you are, and please keep your questions succinct. Anybody? Gentleman over here.
Ben Handelman from Fox 6. I was shocked at some of the truancy numbers that we've been reading on the news. And I know you briefly talked about it, but how does Milwaukee's truancy compare to other places you've been? And do you have specific plans to get kids to school? Because it doesn't matter what you talked about it. You could have the greatest idea, but if nobody's there to learn it, what's the matter?
Well, the specific plans are to, one, monitor the data regularly and then intervene. We send out notices to families and, making sure that they're aware if their child is not in attendance to school. So that's the first piece of prevention. And we make sure our classrooms are engaging, that schools are places that students want to be, that there's good food. A lot of the older kids talk to us about the food. I heard that there's better attendance on the day that we serve mock chicken. And so just making sure that we are addressing some of those things. Fridays and Mondays are harder days for our kiddos to get up, addressing the mental health issues and making sure that kids have the support in school and that they have a trusted adult that they can turn to is really important, who welcomes them. So safe and welcoming, we don't just say safe and welcoming because it sounds good together. We say it because it really matters. Kids have to feel like they belong. They have to see each other and see themselves in school and have trusted adults who care for them and check in with them every day. So that's the one piece. When it becomes a truancy where we're talking 5, 10, 15 days that they've been absent, that's when you have home visits from our social workers, following up with families, making sure there's not some crisis going on or neglect or abuse or anything like that. And then when it gets to, really chronic absenteeism, then, your DA's getting involved in that sort of thing with letters going home to families and saying, there are fees and fines, you have compulsory attendance, you must get your child to school, et cetera, et cetera. So. Well, I would say that in Milwaukee it is challenging. It's much more challenging than it has been in other areas that I've been in. But I would say that some of the conditions that the children are experiencing right now are much more challenging than I've ever experienced in my career, in terms of trauma, youth violence, poverty, segregation, lack of opportunity. Just extremely challenging.
Karen Hunt from Seeds of Health. And staying on this attendance issue, can you address whether you believe that the ice and the fear of ice raids is possibly keeping kids away from school and what the district is possibly doing to help protect our kids?
Yeah, it is absolutely keeping kids out of school. And so, I think that the current climate is challenging for all of us currently, quite honestly, and particularly for our immigrant families and undocumented families. We have safe haven policies. We have supports. We've done fairs for families to come up safely. We've communicated through other means with social workers and other means to families to make sure that they know that they can come to school. So we're intervening that way. With our families to make sure that they know that it's safe to come to school, but that still doesn't make it safe for some of them, right? I mean, it's really just very sad that where we are right now.
Oh, Marilyn.
There's been a lot of conversation today about proficiency in reading and math, and I'm going to stay on that topic. You talked a lot about the importance of working with that in the early grades to make sure there's good basis good education when they're young. Specifically, what are you doing for the kids who have maybe gone through to middle school and high school, are nowhere near their proficiency levels or the standard? We hear a lot about employers who would like to hire MPS graduates, but they don't have those basic skills. So specifically, what are you doing to address the kids who are way behind, and what are your benchmarks and timing for measuring that progress?
So, we just launched our literacy plan, which is addressing Tier 1 instruction. So we're taking a focus mostly on Tier 1, which is good first teaching, meaning we believe that if all teachers understand the science of reading at all grade levels, that all children will benefit and grow. Secondarily, students have access to libraries, they have access to city year mentoring and tutors, forward scholar tutors in the schools to support, as well as getting support from pullout, particularly some of our students who are special education, getting additional resources that way from teachers who are helping with their reading. But there's always so much more that we have to do with our non-readers. But right now, we've launched the program that we're doing to train our teachers has been mostly focused on the Tier 1 instruction, not negating that we still have work to do with the high school teachers, because they're also getting trained in the science of reading and the foundations of reading so that they incorporate reading skills into their actual lessons in social studies and mathematics, et cetera, and work on that.
I think we have time for one more question, if anybody. Carl?
Sure, Carl Miller, Miller Communications, but also serving on the board of the Milwaukee Public Schools Foundation. We raise private dollars to support our public schools. I'm not surprised or shocked at truancy rates when I know how many of our children living in poverty come from homes where there's nobody to get them off to school in the morning. And we can't blame that on the system, or at least the school system. But we have a saying around here, good news travels, bad news travels like wildfire, good news travels slow. So we're not expecting you to be hit with a lot of questions about all the good things you're doing, but one that I'd like to talk about is that early when you arrived, the Greater Milwaukee Committee, Bader Foundation stepped up, created a special fund for you to help you as the new superintendent do some things that you couldn't do with your regular budget. And I think the employers are stepping up because guess what? We have a shortage of workers today. We need these children to succeed in life, and they're willing to invest in it. So maybe you want to talk about what you're looking for from the private sector to support what you're doing.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that question, and there's just a lot that the community can do to help us at Milwaukee Public Schools. One is I'd love to see more tutors in our schools helping us with these Tier 2 interventions that the woman was talking about back here with our non-readers. We need to really have a strategy around supporting our non-readers that are currently in our schools. And then I think the second is being able to ensure that, we have other opportunities to partner with businesses. The city's been wonderful to work with us around adopting a school. So they've been doing a lot of work initially with our lead work and coming out and helping us with that. So there's opportunities to volunteer. There's opportunities to help with tutoring and mentoring our kids. Then there's also the opportunity to partner with career apprenticeships, internships, partner with labor. I was just at View School today where we have a local business that is doing they created a maker's lab in our school, and really grateful for that partnership. So those types of partnerships really help, partnering with our universities and colleges on teacher preparation, and making sure that teachers come to us already trained in the science of reading, which would be great. So there's just a number of ways that the universities, the colleges, the private sector can step up. I'm immensely grateful to the GMC and our business community for their incredible support. That has allowed me to act quickly on some of the operational pieces that we needed to put in place, particularly communications strategy. They've helped with being able to offer training to the cabinet to do search for cabinet members to be able to start with our literacy plan and start moving quickly on that. So there's been a number of things that this partnership and this funding that they gave me allowed me without having to go to contracting and all of those things that I would need to usually do. I could just move quickly with that funding through the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and the Greater Milwaukee Committee.
Well, thank you. Thanks for those questions, folks. Those were insightful. We appreciate it. I apologize. Sorry about that. Just wanted to ask a round of applause for Superintendent Cassellius and our journalists, please. Thank you. Thanks again to our event sponsors and to the Newsroom Pub and Safe House for being the hosting sponsor of this event. If you want to join the press club, you can be a journalist or you can be an associate. You can apply online at our website, which is MilwaukeePressClub.org. And I just want to let you know we have some upcoming events, including another one of these Newsmaker Luncheons next Thursday, October 2nd. That will be with Archbishop Grobe. And then the following day, on Friday, October 3rd, we have our annual Media Hall of Fame, which is a wonderful event and dinner right across the street here at the Arts Hotel, St. Kate Arts Hotel. Thanks, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate it.